but a bittersweet memory. It was time for rebuilding. In the next 2 years, he would bring names like Dennis Law and Paddy Crerand to Old Trafford and find reward in his instruction to his staff. Let Best develop naturally. Don't coach him.
There's a story that the first time you were around with first team players, that you had Harry Gregg going all over the place and he very nearly thumped you as a result of it. Is that true?
Harry was like typical, lunatic goalkeeper. You daren't score against him, whether it was in practice or in a proper game. And Harry was no different. And I remember it was like a 7-8 aside game, and Harry was in goals. Actually, it was difficult to keep Harry in goals. He always fancied himself as a centre forward, I think. Anyway, on this occasion, I'd broken through, and he had tried to sell me a dummy, and I'd done him and sent him the wrong way. And I didn't know at the time, but he's thinking, this cheeky little kid, I'll get him next time. Anyway, it happened 2 or 3 times, and Harry, if I hadn't been Irish, I think he'd have probably buried me then and there. And he talked about it in later years, and it was, to me, it was a great compliment.
Following Manchester United had become a religion. Crowds of 60,000 or more were commonplace. In September 1963, 4 months after Best signed as a professional, Busby revealed his 17-year-old Irish pearl.
The one thing that stands out is the actual running onto the field before the game. A tunnel at United is on a high level. You don't actually see the crowd until you're about halfway through it, or you see the start of the crowd. And this amazing feeling where they can see, the people opposite can see the players, the first few players coming out. And they start, and it's like a chain reaction, of course. It's like turning the volume up on a radio, where it just got louder and louder. That feeling will stay with me for the rest of my life. The hairs in the back of my head stood up. But once I actually got out there and started knocking the ball around, it was just another game. And I did exactly the same things in the first team as I've been doing with the junior teams. A lot of the times the wrong things, because, I still tried to beat too many players, If I'd beaten 4, I looked for the 5th instead of looking for a teammate. But those were things that I learned. I learned through my own mistakes and through players like Dennis Law and Bobby Charlton telling me in no uncertain terms that it was the wrong way to do it.
Right, face this way.
Last one.
Go! The new face amongst the famous made the difference. Very soon, United were once more a team going places.
Go! Go! Go!
I know everyone says that, Manchester United in those days were a sort of a family club, but they really were. After training was, we went off to a lovely woman called Mrs. B, Mrs. Burgess there, and we, Dennis and Bobby, myself, Shea Brennan, Nobby Stiles, Alec, would go off and have a cup of tea every day after training. I'd just sit there, and the boss would walk in, join us for a cup of tea, and I was just another player. If I did things wrong, they told me. I hadn't got to the stage where I told them yet, because I was only learning, and these were great players.
You played in many matches, George, and many of them, I think, would justify the adjective great. But would I be right in saying that playing in the FA Youth Cup final against Manchester City would be pretty high on your list?
It was, because I think in those days, the Youth Cup, the Manchester United, and doing well in it, was as important, I think, as the first team doing well, because it meant that they had that constant supply of hopefully great players. So to do well in the Youth Cup was important. And particularly that year, with Manchester City doing so well. And we were talking about 25,000 people for a youth game, which was amazing, really. And we played them at Old Trafford, and I think we beat them well, and also beat them in the return. And in those days, Mike Doyle, who was a sort of, I think he was our captain, was a United hater in it. And unfortunately, poor old Mike stuck one in his own net. He and I chased the through ball. He got there first and stuck it through his own keeper. And they had the following one, had a photograph of me leaning up against the post, laughing at him because the ball had gone in the net.
Did you not feel any sympathy from Mike Doyle?
I would have done if he'd have kept his mouth shut. But the fact that he was shutting his mouth off and they were going to do this to us and do that to us, any sympathy I would have had went very quickly out the window. No, I didn't have any at all.
Windsor Park, Belfast saw Best in the green of Northern Ireland before his 18th birthday. Over the years, there were times when it viewed him as the returning hero. But he proved to be like a butterfly, stopping only to brighten the scene before flitting away. When his country reached the World Cup finals in 1982, his time had gone, and memories of 37 caps remain in isolation.
The game that everyone talks about is one year we played Scotland at Windsor, and they talk about me beating them single-handed. And it was one of those games where everything I did went right. You know, I was beating 3 or 4 players. I was shooting from all sorts of angles. I think Ronnie Simpson had come back and had been playing, and he had one of those games as well. It was like him against me. We beat Scotland 1-0, and people still talk about that as being my best game. I also played against Scotland at Hampden one year, and I actually think I scored in that game maybe possibly one of the better goals that I've ever scored.
Best to Dugan, to McMordy, to Best. Oh, beautiful goal!
And I think because it was me that it was disallowed from, you know. The game ended 1-1, but I remember someone crossed the ball from the right wing, and they hit it. It was like a shot. It was coming 100 mile an hour, and I just let it hit my thigh, and before it hit the deck, I volleyed it into the net. I mean, I went nuts. I thought, great goal. It was, and the referee disallowed it for a handball. And I think, there was never. I know I didn't handle it. I know I scored a great goal, and this guy has taken it away from me in a split second by. He obviously thought it was a handball. I know it wasn't, but I think it happened so quickly. I think he figured that it was impossible to have controlled it and scored as quickly as I did without handling it. So I think in a way it cost me who I was. It cost me one of the better goals I'd scored. Another Northern Ireland thing was, people still ask me today, was an incident with Gordon Banks, where Gordon had the ball, and I used to watch goalkeepers when they had the ball in the area, how they kicked it out. You know, some kick it from their hands, others drop kick it, others hit it on the volley, some on the half volley. I knew Gordon threw the ball in the air, so it was in the air for a split second or a second. And I waited until he threw it. And while it was in play, which I considered in play if it's not in his hands, I knocked it to the side and scored. And the referee disallowed it. I still don't know why. Because I think it was because he'd never seen anybody do it before. And I think that's why he disallowed it. To me, it was a good goal. And again, I think I suffered because it was me. Because I don't think anyone else would have tried it. And I think that's the only reason he disallowed it. Because the ball was in play, and I was quite entitled to go for it. I actually did the same thing to Pat Jennings about a month later at Old Trafford. And Pat used to drop kick him, and as he drop kicked, I tackled him. And the ball broke loose, and I scored from it, and the referee allowed it. So it was, maybe they were learning, the referees.
Going back to United and the days of the Championships and the European Cup and so on,
can you pick from them the high points for you personally?
But one night, playing at Stamford Bridge, there was 63,000 people there. No trouble, 2 great sides. And it was, as I say, they were the young, exciting side that were going to knock us off the top. And we were the sort of older heads, or players like Dennis and Bobby and Paddy. And we came down and went out and played absolutely magnificently. Beat them 2-0. In front of this massive crowd. I remember that sticks in my mind because I had one of those nights where sort of everything went right for me. It was one game that sticks in my mind.